Hello, Ellie here with my sidekick Dobby, and I know I haven't had a video in a little bit, but that's because I was away last weekend in New York seeing Hamilton. What? And then I got sick, and I'm pretty sure it was the flu even though I kept working. But here I am, and it is February, which means I'm ready for my January wrap-up. It is currently Super Bowl Sunday, and I have made a video before the previous two Eagles games, and then they won. So I'm making a video today, and it probably won't be posted until after the Super Bowl's over. So either this will be really embarrassing in a couple ways, or it will only be embarrassing that I'm wearing a 15-year-old jersey. Yeah, it's time for an update. Anyway, let's get into some books I read in January. I ended December of 2017 in the middle of an audiobook and an ebook, neither of which I have physical copies of, but that's okay. I had started Wait For You by J. Lynn, which is actually Jennifer Armentrout's name that she seems to write new adult novels under. And I don't usually read new adult because the detail can be a little too much for me in, certain scenes, but I read this one. The thing is, I love Jennifer Armentrout's stories, and yes, the detail can be a little much for me and I get a little uncomfortable at times. I just love her characters and her plot so much, although these ones, I have certain problems with them, which I will link my Goodreads review below for, I forget which one I wrote this under, but I'll put one of my Goodreads reviews below for one of the books in this series. I've been making my way through it, although I had to stop because some other books came out that I will talk about in a moment. Anyway, the first one, which might have been my favorite so far, I don't know. The first one follows a girl named Avery who has a dark past that she's trying to escape, and she finally gets to go away and goes to college, and the last thing she wants is to meet a guy that she can't stop thinking about, but that's exactly what happens, and he keeps showing up everywhere, and it's adorable. That's all I'm gonna say. I gave it 3.8 stars, mostly because I don't usually read new adult, and this was definitely new adult, but the storyline and the plot made it get those 4 stars, and I loved the characters, I liked the story. It's just new adult. I don't read new adult for a reason. Also, I started January in the middle of A Million Worlds with You, which is the third and final Firebird book. I explained in a couple different other videos that the Firebird trilogy is about a girl who believes her father has been murdered and needs to travel through dimensions to catch the person that they believe killed her father. But it actually gets a lot more complicated than they thought, and it talks about destiny and love and souls, and I really enjoyed this series. It's the ones with like the beautiful covers. I think I have the first one. This series with these beautiful covers, this is the first one, which is the only one I physically own, even though I listen to all of them in audiobook, but they're beautiful, and I'd heard that the cover was the best part about them, but I really like the story too. So definitely read those. I really enjoyed that series. Oh, I gave that one 4 stars as well. Next, I read the ebook of Trust in Me, which is Wait For You, which was the first book I talked about, but from the guy's point of view. And that one I gave 3 stars because it was literally the same story told from his point of view, and it actually reminded me more of the things that annoyed me about the first one than it taught me anything new and good. And even the couple of times where I was wondering what was going on in his head, we didn't even see those moments. So it was kind of just pointless, and yeah, I didn't love it. I still like the characters, but I didn't love it, and it was actually more difficult for me to enjoy the parts I liked in the first one in this one. So I definitely didn't love that one. But then I still had to keep reading, and I read the second official book in that series, which is called Be With Me. This one follows the sister of the guy in the first one and the best friend of the guy in the first one, and that's all I'm gonna say, but it's really cute. And I think I like this one the most of the ones I've read so far. It was a little bit less creepy in a sense. I think because the female character was stronger and more outgoing. The male character wasn't as dominant as in the others. And I do mean dominant in like a, if it wasn't clear she was already in love with him and this was endgame, therefore everything he's doing is kind of okay, it would be really creepy kind of way. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. But the second one was better. I liked the second one. I gave it 4 stars again, but that one was like a solid 4 stars. There was only one scene in this one that, like, there were several scenes that made me uncomfortable because of the detail, but there was only one where I was like, that's really creepy. Why is that happening? But, yeah. The next book I read is the third one in that series, and it's called Stay With Me, and that one is about one of the characters that you meet in the second one going off and figuring out her life. And that's the one where I went into my rant because, once again, it's a very dominant male who kind of just puts himself into the girl's life and is like, this is how things are going to work, and if you don't like it, that's tough. And because it is a situation where she kind of needs some guidance, plus it's very clear that these two are going to be together, it seems almost okay, but it's not okay. Because as a reader you know that, but he didn't know that. So when he's acting that way, it's not okay. It's like, it's not a good character trait for him. And it's creepy. And I went in a little rant that I will link below, but that's what I'm gonna say. I mean, I did love the stories in the end. I liked the plot development, I liked the character development, I liked the character arcs, but at some points it was creepy. And if it wasn't clearly going to work out the way it was, it would have been really creepy. I finally have a copy of a book I read in January. Next, I read Unearthed by Amy Kaufman and Megan Spooner. These are the authors of the Starbound trilogy. I love this series so much. It's so cute, it's so great, and it's sci-fi and wonderful and spacey and so cool. Yeah, anyway, this is the first of their new series, which might be a duology, might be a trilogy, I don't know, but it's more than just this book. And it's about 2 people that go to this planet that used to have aliens on it, but now they seem to have died out. And one of them just is trying to make a living to save her sister, who has been sold, and the other one is trying to redeem his father's name because his father was like the head of the people going there and went crazy because they weren't listening to him anymore, and now he's in jail, and the son is trying to prove that his father was right and that they should have listened to him. They meet up and insaneness ensues, and there are twists and turns, and I wanted to do a video for this. This is probably the one I would have done last week if I wasn't busy seeing Hamilton and then getting the flu. So I don't have a video for this one, and at this point I probably won't, unfortunately, but it was really good and everybody should read it. It was a little slow to start, I believe, but once I got into it, it was really good, and the ending was insane, and I couldn't stop reading, and I love these 2 authors a lot. I really do. If you like their other trilogy, definitely read this. It has the same kind of feel. It's a little bit less romancy. There's still some romance in it, but it's less focused on the romance and more focused on the adventure, which I think is a good thing, even though you know how much I love romance. Before I forget, I do want to talk about Let's Talk About Love. Even though I did not read this in January, the book came out in January, and I do have a book talk for it, which you should definitely check out. It was my 3rd favorite book that I read in 2017, and it hit really close to home, and everybody in the world needs to read this. It is about a girl named Alice who is biromantic asexual. After her girlfriend breaks up with her, she thinks that love just isn't for her, but then she meets a boy who makes her rethink things and think maybe it's possible, maybe it's not, I don't know, but I had a lot of feelings while reading this book. A lot of feelings, and I think everybody needs to read it. Next, I audiobooked an anthology, which was adorable. It was called Meet Cute, and there are a lot of authors in this. I need to look through to see who they are. The stories in this anthology are by Jennifer L Armentrout, Danielle Clayton, Katie Catugno, Jocelyn Davies, Huntley Fitzpatrick, Nina LaCour, Emery Lauro, Catherine McGee, Cass Morgan, Jolie Murphy, Meredith Russo, Sarah Shepard, Nicola Yoon, and Ibi Zoboi. I have read and loved several of those authors, so I was so excited to read this. It's about people meeting and being really cute, and then like maybe the start of a love story, who knows? But I did this in audiobook form, which probably wasn't the best for an anthology, because when I'm reading an anthology, I like to be aware of which author I'm reading at the time, and it's not always easy to like hear it at the beginning and then just remember whose it is, especially because I'll stop in the middle of a story sometimes because I'll be like listening on my way to work or something, and then I'll get back in the car and I'll forget whose story it is. But for me, like, there's a difference with the different authors, and I also just like knowing whose story I'm reading. I feel like that's fair. So in an anthology, when I'm reading it physically, I can easily look back at the page and see whose story I'm reading and what it's called and things like that. But you can't really do that so much in an anthology, or at least it's much more difficult. So I think I'm going to do some research before I give more information on this one, and I do need to write up an actual review. This book it's out now, but I read it for the fandom.net, and I need to do a physical review for it, which I do plan to do in the next week, but I think I'm going to write it out. I'm not going to do a video because I need to do a little bit of research. If I had been physically reading this, I would have been taking notes and had ratings for like each book in it, but as it is, I need to do research to remind myself who wrote which one and who the characters were in each one and what it was before I give my thoughts on each one, because I like remember the stories but not in the detail that I would like to. So I will link my review for that, which will be on the fandom.net, in the description when I have it, which will hopefully be in the next week. The last book I finished in January was also an audiobook, and I will explain why in a moment. It was All American Boys by Jason Reynolds and Brendan Keeley. Funny story, I bought a copy of this last year because I had been hearing a lot of hype about it and I really wanted to read it, and I saw it for sale and I'm just like, I'm just gonna buy it. But I had it sent to my school, and it arrived one day, and I was like, okay, well, I need to go, so I'm just gonna leave this box here with its contents in it on my desk, and I'm gonna go home and get ready because there's a little book convention this weekend. And I got to the book convention, and the book is on the table, and I'm like, wait, why is this book here? And they're like, because the author's here. And I'm like, I have this book sitting on my desk at work. And I did not think to look to see if the authors were going to be at this convention that I was literally coming to the next day. That was stupid of me. Anyway, so I have a physical copy. I actually don't know what happened to it since then, unfortunately. I'm sure it will show up at some point, and I will now add it to my read shelf. But I ended up listening to the audiobook of it, and it was really good. If you don't know, it is about two boys, one black, one white. And yes, that is important. The black boy ends up being accused of stealing and faces police brutality and ends up in the hospital. Meanwhile, the white boy comes while this is happening and sees it, and it turns out the police officer has been like an older brother to the white boy, and he's now stuck between being a witness to this horrible thing he saw that changed his perspective and needing to protect the person that has protected him when his own father passed away, and a lot of other things have happened. Obviously, there's a lot going on at school between the different races and the sides, and it seems like it's a pretty small town where everybody knows everybody, but there's a clear divide between the races, at least now there is, where there wasn't a visible divide before, but now it has come. So I actually found his story more interesting than the other one, purely because, I mean, the other one, he got beat up, and that's awful, but his story was all about recovery, and that's great, but whereas the other one's story was about his mind having to change, and him having to choose between what's safe and what's right. and what that means to him as an individual and his friendships and his relationships with his family and everything. And it was fascinating. And at the end of the book, I remember I was actually listening to this as I was driving home to New Jersey to drop off my dog before I went to see Hamilton. And I was absolutely bawling. Like, not just crying, bawling. Tears were pouring down my cheeks. It was beautiful, though. This book was beautiful. And everybody needs to read it. If you haven't already, do it. That is it for the books that I finished in January. I did get my hands, finally, on Iron Gold by Pierce Brown. If you don't know, I am absolutely obsessed with the Red Rising trilogy and Pierce Brown. And I've been so excited for this book. Unfortunately, it came out at bad timing where I was really busy with work and then seeing Hamilton and then getting the flu. So I haven't finished it yet, but I'm really close. This is a signed bookmark. Thanks, Flo. But I'm really close to finishing, and I'm hoping to do that in the next day or two. And then I will have a review up for this one eventually once I'm finished, I think. I'm not going to say anything about this because it's a spoiler for the Red Rising trilogy. I'm not including this in part of that series. I'm considering this as a sequel series, the start of a sequel series to the Red Rising trilogy, because that one, it ended, it's over, and this one takes place 10 years later, and I am counting it as something separate, but related. Yeah, read Red Rising if you haven't. I don't know where you've been because it's amazing and wonderful and flawless, and everybody in the world needs to read it. So far, I'm not liking this one quite as much, and I think, I don't know, I'm just not connecting with it the same way, and maybe it's because it's been taking me so long because of things that have nothing to do with this book, and maybe that's unfair, but I'm going to have to talk through it with people, and obviously I'm going to have to see what happens when we get to the end, because it's often the end of these books that make me go, okay, that was amazing. So we'll see. That is it for the books that I read in January, or even started in January, but there are a couple other books that I got my hands on in January, finally. So I'm going to talk about those. First up, we have Geekerella, and I have heard such wonderful things about this book, and I am so excited to read it. Sorry, let me hold it where you can actually see it instead of me shaking it. I'm really excited to read this one. I've heard amazing things. I had the opportunity to meet the author at Y'all Fest. She happened to be in a line right next to me, and I chatted with her a bit, and she's really nice and wonderful, and I'm kind of glad that I met her before I read this because I have a feeling I'm going to be fangirling, and I was able to talk to her without fangirling. So I like that. And now I'm gonna become a fangirl and things will change. But we'll see. I'm gonna read this soon, I hope. I also got my hands on We Are Okay by Nina LaCour. At that same convention I talked about where the authors of All American Boys was, I heard her talk about this book. I had read the book that she co-wrote with David Levithan, but I had never read anything that was just Nina LaCour other than short stories. And she was talking about this one, and it sounded so good, and I was so excited, and I'm really excited to read this. I'm glad I finally got my hands on it, and I hope to read it soon. Yay! And finally, I got the fourth book in the Magisterium series by Holly Black and Cassandra Clare. I have not read the third one yet. I actually largely got this one for my students, one of which is getting close to reading the third one and will probably read it before me. But now I have the fourth one when she's ready or when I'm eventually ready, because I did enjoy the first two, especially the first one. I've read the first one 3 times because I read it once by myself and then twice to children. I read the second one as well, and I have not read the third one yet, and I need to read that one and this one, but I have them now, so that's something. Anyway, that is it for January 2018. I had a really quick start. I had read 5 books by a week in, but then life happened and I slowed down. I am going to keep reading. I'm going to hopefully finish the Be With You series by J. Lynn / Jennifer L Armentrout. And I don't know if I'm going to read any more new adult from her because even though I love her stories, I'm not completely sold on the whole new adult thing, and it's kind of reinforced why I'm sorry, but I'm gonna finish this series because now I'm invested in the characters. I have some books I'm excited about coming out. I don't think I have any in February, but I do in March, and I'll talk about those as they draw closer. I also do have some arcs that I need to read before the book comes out, or at least soon after the book comes out, or the book's already out, but I still need to read them. I have a lot of books, guys. Anyway, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at ReaderGonnaRead. Subscribe by clicking down there or up there, and give me a thumbs up if you like this video. I will talk to you next time. Goodbye! E-A-G-S. No! Hey, Ellie and Dobby here. Like the video? Come subscribe. Do it right now. Click it.